Tonight's homework is a little different, so listen carefully for directions and make sure you read them on Google Classroom. We're going to read 69 to 79 and you're going to annotate. Then when we get to page 80, that's when you're going to start looking for the parts of a genre-based thinking job, and that's what's going to be on your quiz tomorrow. So you should not start looking for a conflict until you get to page 80. Right now you're just focused on annotations. Chapter 4. Cassie, what's the matter with you, girl? Big Ma asked as she thrust 3 sticks of dried pine into the stove to rekindle the dying morning fire. You sure are taking a sorrowful long time to churn that butter. Nothing, I muttered. Nothing. Big Ma turned and looked directly at me. You been moping round here for the past week like you got the whooping cough, flu, and measles all put together. I sighed deeply and continued to churn. Big Ma reached out and felt my forehead, then my cheeks. Frowning, she pulled her hand away as Mama entered the kitchen. Mary, feel this child's face, she said. She seem warm to you? Mama cupped my face in her thin hands. You feel sick, Cassie? No, How do you feel? All right, I said, still churning. Mama studied me with the same disturbed look Big Ma wore, and a tiny frown line appeared on her brow. Cassie, she said softly, fixing her dark eyes upon me, is there something you want to tell me? I was on the verge of blurting out the awful truth about the bus and the men in the night, but then I remembered the pact Stacy had made us all swear to when I had told him, Christopher John, and Little Man about the caravan, and I said instead, No, ma'am, and began to churn again. Abruptly, Mama took hold of the churning stick, her eyes searching mine. As she studied me, she seemed about to ask me something. Then the question faded and she pulled away, lifting the lid of the churn. It looks ready now, she said with a sigh. Dip out the butter like I showed you and wash it down. I'll take care of the milk. I scooped the butter from the churning lid onto a plate and went through the curtain to the small pantry off the kitchen to get the molding dish. It had been placed on a high shelf under several other dishes, and I had to stand on a stool to get it. As I eased it out, Mama and Big Ma spoke softly in worried tones on the other side of the curtain. Something the matter with that child, Mary. She's not sick, Mama. There's all sorts of sickness. She ain't ate right for going on over a week. She ain't sleeping right either, restless and murmuring in her sleep all night long, and she won't hardly even go out and play, rather be in here helping us. Now you know that ain't like that child. There was a moment's pause, then Mama whispered so I could hardly hear her. Mama, you think she could have seen? Oh, Lord, no, child, Big Ma exclaimed hastily. I checked in there right after they passed, and she was sound asleep. She couldn't have seen them old devils, the boys neither. Mama sighed. The boys, they're not themselves either, all of them, too quiet. Here it is Saturday morning, and they're quiet as church mice. I don't like it, and I can't shake the feeling it's got something to do with... Cassie! Without warning, I had lost my balance, and with an absurd topple from the knee-high stool, crashed upon the floor with the molding dish. Cassie, you hurt? Mama asked, stooping beside me. No, I mumbled, feeling very clumsy and close to tears. I knew that if I let the tears fall, Mama's suspicion that something was wrong would be confirmed, for I never cried about such a silly thing as a fall. In fact, I seldom ever cried. So instead of crying, I jumped up quickly and began to pick up the broken pieces of the dish. I'm sorry, Mama, I said. That's all right, she said, helping me. When we had swept the chips away with the long field straw broom, she told me, Leave the butter, Cassie, and go on with the boys. But, Mama, I'll do the butter. Now go on, do like I say. I stared up at Mama, wondering if she would ever know what we had done, then joined the boys who were sitting listlessly around the fire, absently listening to TJ. See, fellows, there's a system of getting out of work, TJ was expounding as I sat down. Just don't be around when it's got to be done. Only thing is, you can't let your folks know that's what you're doing. See, you should do like me. Like this morning when Mama wanted to bring back them scissors she borrowed from Miss Logan, I ups and volunteers, so she don't have to make this long trip down here, she being so busy and all. And naturally, when I got here, y'all wanted me to stay a while and talk to y'all, so what could I do? I couldn't be impolite, could I? And by the time I finally convince y'all I gotta go, all the work will be done at home. TJ chuckled with satisfaction. Yeah, you just have to use this old brain, that's all. He was quiet a moment, expecting some comment on his discourse, but no one said a word. TJ's eyes roamed the length of the room. Then he admonished, See, if you was smart like me, Stacy, you'd use the old brain to get the questions on that big test coming up. Just think. They're probably just sitting right here in this very room, waiting to be discovered. Stacy cast at TJ an annoyed look, but did not speak. Y'all sure are a sorry lot this morning, TJ observed. A feller's just waiting his know-how talking to y'all. Ain't nobody asked you to give it, said Stacy. Well, you don't have to get snippety about it, replied TJ haughtily. Again, silence prevailed, but that would not do for TJ. Say, how about we sneak down to that old Wallace store and learn how to do them new dances? Mama told us not to go down there, Stacy said. You some mama's boy or something? You gotta do everything your mama tells. You go on if you want to go, said Stacy quietly, not rising to TJ's bait, but we stay in here. Again, silence. Then TJ said, Say, y'all hear the latest about them nightmen? Suddenly all eyes turned from the fire and riveted themselves upon him. Our faces were eager question marks. We were totally in TJ's power. What about them? Stacy asked, almost evenly. TJ, of course, intended to nurse the moment for as long as he could. You see, when a fellow's as smart as me, he gets to know things that other folks don't. Now, this kind of information ain't for the ears of little kids, so I really shouldn't even tell y'all. Then don't, said Stacy with a smooth finality, turning back toward the fire as if he cared not at all about the nightmen. Taking his cue, I nudged Christopher John and Christopher John nudged Little Man, and the three of us forced ourselves to stare into the fire in feigned disinterest. Without a captive audience, TJ had to re-interest us by getting to the point. Well, about a week ago, they rode down to Mr. Sam Tatum's place. You know, down the Jackson Road toward Strawberry, and you know what they done? Stacy, Little Man, and I kept our eyes upon the fire, but Christopher John piped eagerly. What? I poked Christopher John, and he turned guiltily around, but TJ, triumphant with an assured audience of one, settled back in his chair, ready to prolong the suspense. You know, Mama'd kill me if she knowed I was telling this. I heard her and Miss Claire Thompson talking about it. They was real scared. Don't know why, though. Them old nightmen sure wouldn't scare me. Like I told Claude. Hey, y'all, Stacy said, standing up and motioning us up. Mama said she wanted us to take some milk and butter down to Miss Jackson before noon. We'd better get started. I nodded, and Christopher John Littleman and I got up. Tarred and feathered him, TJ announced hastily. Poured the blackest star they could find all over him. Then plastered him with chicken feathers, TJ laughed. Can you imagine that? But why? Asked Little Man, forgetting our ploy. This time TJ did not slow down. I don't know if y'all's little's ears should hear this, but it seems he called Mr. Jim Lee Barnett a liar. He's the one who runs the mercantile down in Strawberry. Mr. Tatum's supposed to done told him that he ain't ordered up all them things Mr. Barnett done charged him for. Mr. Barnett said he had all them things Mr. Tatum ordered writ down, and when Mr. Tatum asked to see that list of his, Mr. Barnett said, You call me a liar, boy? And Mr. Tatum said, Yes, sir, I guess I is. That done it. Then it wasn't 'cause of the bus? Christopher John blurted out. Bus? What's a bus got to do with it? Nothing, said Stacy quickly. Nothing at all. Well, if anybody said them nightmen was down in here 'cause of some stupid bus, they crazy, said TJ authoritatively. 'Cause my information come direct from Miss Claire Thompson, who's seen Mr. Tatum herself. You sure? Stacy asked. Sure, I'm sure. When do I ever say anything when I ain't sure? Stacy smiled with relief. Come on, let's get the milk. All of us went into the kitchen, then to the bedrooms to get our coats. When we got inside, TJ remembered that he had left his cap by the fire and ran back to retrieve it. As soon as we were alone, Little Man asked, Stacy, you really think them nightmen put tar and feathers all over Mr. Tatum? I suppose so, said Stacy. Little Man frowned, but it was Christopher John who spoke, whispering shrilly as if a stray morning ghost might overhear. If they ever find out about the bus, you think they're going to put tar and feathers all over us? Little Man's frown deepened, and he observed gravely. If they did, we'd never get clean again. Cassie, said Christopher John, his eyes wide, was you real scared when you seen 'em? Little Man shivered with excitement. I wish I could have seen 'em. Well, I don't, declared Christopher John. In fact, I wish I'd never heard of no nightmen or buses or secrets or holes in the road. And with that outburst, he stuffed his pudgy hands into his thin jacket, pressed his lips firmly together, and refused to say another word. After a few moments, Stacy said, What's keeping TJ? The rest of us shrugged, then followed Stacy back up to the porch and to Mama's room. As we entered, TJ jumped. He was standing at the desk with Mama's W.E.B. Du Bois, the Negro, in his hands. "That don't look like your cap," said Stacy. "Aw, man, I ain't done nothing. Just looking at Miss Logan's history book, that's all. I'm mighty interested in that place called Egypt she been telling us about, and them black kings that was ruling back then." Still talking, he casually put down the book and picked up his cap. All four of us looked accusingly at TJ, and he halted. "Say, what is this? What's the meaning of sneaking up on me like that anyway? Y'all think I was looking for them test questions or something? Shoot, a fellow'd think you didn't trust him." Then thrusting his arm around Stacy's shoulders, he chided, "Friends gotta trust each other, Stacy, 'cause ain't nothing like a true friend." And with those words of wisdom, he left the room, leaving us to wonder how he had managed to slink out of this one. The Monday after his arrival, Mr. Morrison had moved into the deserted tenant shack that stood in the south pasture. It was a sorry mess, that house. Its door hung sadly from a broken hinge, its porch floorboards were rotted, and its one-room interior was densely occupied by rats, spiders, and other field creatures. But Mr. Morrison was a quiet man, almost shy, and although Mama had offered him lodging in our house, he preferred the old shack. Mama sensed that Mr. Morrison was a private person, and she did not object to the move, but she did send the boys and me to the house to help clean it. Little man Christopher John and I took to Mr. Morrison immediately, and had no objections to the cleaning. Anybody who was a friend of Papa's was all right in our book. Besides, when he was near, nightmen and burn-ins and midnight tarrings faded into a hazy distance. But Stacy remained aloof, and had little to do with him. After the cleaning, I asked Mama if Christopher John Littleman and I could go visit Mr. Morrison, but she said no. "But, Mama, I want to know more about him," I explained. "I just want to know how come he's so big." "You know about as much as you need to know," she decided. "As long as Mr. Morrison stays here, that's his house. If he wants you down there, he'll ask you. Don't know how come y'all want to hang out with there no way," Stacy said moodily when Mama was out of hearing. "'Cause we like him, that's why," I answered, tired of his distant attitude toward Mr. Morrison. Then, as discreetly as I could, I said, "What's the matter with you, boy, not liking Mr. Morrison?" Stacy shrugged. "I like him all right." "Don't act that way." Stacy looked away from me. "Don't need him here. All that work he's doing, I could have done it myself." "Ah, you couldn't have done no such thing. Besides," I looked around to be certain that Big Ma and Mama were not near. "Besides, Papa didn't just bring him here to do no work. You know how come he really here." Stacy turned toward me haughtily. I could have taken care of that, too. I rolled my eyes at him, but held my peace. I didn't feel like a fight, and as long as Mr. Morrison was within holler distance of that back porch, it made little difference to me what Stacy thought he could do. "I sure wouldn't want that big old man staying in my place," said TJ on the way to school. "I bet you he'd get mad one time, he'd take old little man and swing him over that tree yonder like he was nothing but a twig." He laughed then as little man set his lips and stared angrily up. "'Course, I could probably about do that myself." "Couldn't either," denied little man. "Hush, man," said Stacy. "TJ, leave man alone." "Aw, I ain't bothering him. Little man's my buddy, ain't you, man?" Little man scowled, but didn't reply. TJ turned back to Stacy. "You ready for that history test?" "Hope so," said Stacy. "But I keep forgetting them dates." "Betcha I could help you if you be nice." "How? You worse than I am about dates." TJ grinned, then slyly pulled a folded sheet of paper from his pocket and handed it to Stacy. Stacy unfolded it, looked at it curiously, then frowned. "You planning on cheating?" "Well, nah, I ain't planning on it," said TJ seriously. "Just if I gotta." "Well, you ain't gonna," said Stacy, tearing the paper in two. "Hey, what's the matter with you, man?" cried TJ, grabbing for the paper. But Stacy turned his back to him and tore the paper into bits, then deposited them in the gully. "Man, that sure ain't right. I wouldn't do you that way." "Maybe not," replied Stacy, "but at least this way you won't get into no trouble." TJ mumbled, "If failing ain't trouble, I don't know what is." All right, now I want you to start reading 80 to 82 with looking for the parts of the genre-based thinking job. So go ahead and click on the next video to watch 80 to 82 and look for the conflict first.